Welcome to the Nightbird Radio Podcast. I'm Timothy Saylor, and I'm going to be your host this evening as we sound out the subconscious, navigate the nocturnal, and explore the farthest reaches of our experience, coming at you from the back of an 86 Dodge Ram van on the rolling foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the great forest, deep in the heart of the Kali Yuga. This is radio for the hauntological turn. And welcome back, Nightbirds. It's great to be back, and it's great to have you back. On this episode, I'm joined by Josh Barber. He is a seeker, a bastard Daoist, a gnostic, a compiler of maps, and a Nightbird. Josh, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, man. How about you?
I'm doing good. It's a little bit hot. How's it there?
Yeah, it's a little hot here, too. It's pretty hot, actually.
Too damn hot.
Too dang hot, man.
So we were having a great conversation before we started this, before we hit record. But before we kind of get back into some of those topics, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? Tell the people about yourself. Maybe, this might be a good time for me to ask you, how did you become a seeker? How did you become a person who sees the world in this way? What experiences did you have early on that keyed you into the fact that there's something else going on besides what's immediately visible?
Well, that's a lot, man. So it's just a whole life of stuff. Some of it's kind of, I actually don't talk about a lot of this. So, as you know, I'm starting a podcast, and this will be a lot of my podcast partner, my buddy Dale, will be hearing a lot of this for the first time also, actually. So we'll see how he takes it.
Nice.
But so I've always had, so when I was 4, my mom passed away. And prior to that, I had these experiences where I would have like this entity show up on my wall at night. And I would have to call her in, and she would come and turn on the night light. It would go away, kind of little kid stuff, but it would tell me, that, I'm going to take your mom away. Your mom is going away, and all this stuff like that, that now I interpret through obviously a different lens. I was raised from there, very Christian, very Florida Southern Baptist type Christian.
Yeah, there's only one. There's not a lot of flavors of Christian down here.
No, there's really not.
People don't know that, or maybe they do know that.
No, maybe. And my grandparents were very influential in that. My grandfather was a preacher. They ran a drug and alcohol rehab, and they were kind of the old school, hard line, real Christianity, like very restrictive, very, this, I don't, many people have the same story, very religious in that Southern Baptist kind of way. So I kind of, I developed I always tried to be real Christian, man. I tried real hard. It never really struck me very well, never stuck with me. I think in high school I did it really well. But I just always had questions. I always had, what do I need you to tell me anything when I have my own voice in my head that tells me what I need to know? I have my own consciousness. And if that consciousness isn't God and isn't what I should be listening to, then what's any of it matter? If that makes sense.
It makes good sense.
And then, I don't want to make it sound like my life was super crazy. I had a couple other experiences, like when my grandfather passed away, my granddaddy passed away, he actually came back to tell me bye. Like it's one of my core memories. And I know that I tell this to a couple people, and they all have explanations, but like, I know what happened, he's dead. It took me 5 minutes to get there. And then he just wakes up, He says, I just wanted to tell you bye and I love you. And he just dies again. Yeah.
Oh, so he actually this was physically. He didn't come visit you in a dream. He
No, this was
actually
physical. Yeah. Yeah.
came, oh wow.
And
Yeah.
I was very close with him. I mean, I think he was the reason he introduced my, he introduced me to what ended up being my flavor of Thelema. My understanding of what Thelema means has a lot to do with his preaching on what love is. And you know, and he would always preach from First Corinthians chapter 13. That's how he would open every sermon. And I don't know, I don't have it all. I should probably have it memorized, but it's the love, without love, you're a sounding gong or noise in the wind. Basically, nothing matters if it doesn't come from love. And then years later, decades later, I joined the OTO for a very short stint and kind of do mess around with gematria. I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to like practice on that kind of stuff. I kind of like my magic to come through feeling. Not really so much of a book guy. I try to, I really try.
Me too. And they end up being unread in a pile over there.
Well, yeah, I have 5 books on my desk right now that I'm reading. I got my Geosophia here because my Greek
Oh, nice.
inheritance course that I'm trying to
Yeah,
go
hell
through.
yeah.
Yeah.
The best permission I ever got was from Marissa Gambaruti, who comes on here a lot, and we were talking about this one time, and I'm like, man, I just can't get through the intros of these books. I just read, I'll just stop during the intro, and she's like, oh, I don't even do that. I just read the parts I like, and I was like, wait, you can do that?
That actually,
I thought I had to
would be
read them
nice.
from the cover to cover in
Yeah.
order.
Do you know how hard it is to read Abramelin the Mage?
Yeah, so hard I haven't even tried.
Yeah, well.
I'm trying to read
So
Jake Stratton Kent's Liber 187. You're talking about gematria. I'm like, I don't know half of what's going on. Now I know that I'm in the presence of someone who does know. So I'm just kind of like absorbing what I can and trusting that the information that needs to get through will. But it's like, yeah, it's
yeah.
advanced.
Well, I tend to look at it like this. Honestly, at this point in my life, like if I need to know it, it will come to me. And it's weird because every time I reach a situation where I encounter something that should be new, I find that I have already gotten some amount of pre-information, like even if it's just a baseline understanding of what it is, I've at least been introduced to it. Um, that's why it's my thing about if you stare at the universe, if you stare at anything, you'll find the information that's in the universe. That's how divination works. Like
that's how synchro mysticism I think works too. But yeah, so anyway, sorry, we got off track. Continue. You were talking about your stint in the OTO.
right, yeah, I did a short stint in the OTO, and then COVID hit, and my body, which was 4 hours away already, it was already kind of difficult to get to, but my body kind of, well, I mean, all the OTO stopped meeting actually, for that couple years. So we just kind of never, my wife and I just never really went back to it because we grew beyond it in that time period. And then I don't know, man, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years, I told you when we were talking earlier that I had watched the Lance Baker Reiki thing, and that
That's
actually
Baker at branchesofhealing.com.
awesome. That actually did a lot. He did like a Reiki attunement, and it opened it like started clicking pieces together. And then I had the gateway experience hemisync files for I don't know, like 10 years or something that I'd been kicking around on Google Drive and all. And I started doing them. And it's like I realized it made everything fall in place to realize that like what is meant by knowledge and conversation, for instance, with your holy guardian angel. I mean, to use the OTO term. I mean, I just kind of got a whole new view on life, man. And then I thought I had a heart attack also. And kind of that time period, it was just a panic attack, but I
Yeah.
shocked myself on my car battery working on I got a 88 Suzuki Samurai that I work
Nice.
on constantly. It's pretty cool, but it's a pain in the ass. And I shocked myself on it because it was wet. I'd been climbing at the rock gym, so my hands were all like chalked up and stuff. And I felt the electricity go through my heart. And I tried to wait. I tried to see how it was going. And at a certain point, I was like, I'm having a heart attack. So I go, I run outside and I try to push it because I couldn't start it. That's why I was working on it. I tried to push it up my driveway, and I realized, like, well, if I'm having a heart attack, I can't push my car. So I run over, my neighbor's outside, and he's just like a North Florida redneck dude. And I'm like, this guy can get me to the hospital. And so he gets me there, and then I drink. He had like a sweet tea or something that I took a sip of, and it immediately just brought my heart rate down and normalized it. But there was that time period in there, man, where I have all these things I say. I'm a person who likes to come up with sayings, and I like to throw them out there. And one of the things I was playing with a few years ago was the idea that your death is inevitable. It's the one thing left in your life that you will do. Likely. I mean, who knows right now where we're at? Who knows? We may be in a different time period completely. I don't know. But from all evidence we have, it's the one thing that you can't avoid. And so I'm sitting in this truck with my neighbor who I only kind of like. And I'm thinking, like, man, I might just be dying. And I had to come to terms with that. And it took all of this, it took everything that I had been doing and all of this study as a cloud, and it just condensed into just an understanding of, well, not an understanding of what is reality, but a view of what is reality. I mean, I'm not going to say I fully understand reality, but I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling.
You're not. I was gonna say, do you see that as an initiation? Because I
I
think that's
do
what that
actually.
is.
You know, I
Yeah.
was thinking about that a while back. I do kind of see that as an initiation, or as a process of initiation. I mean,
Yeah.
I
It's an
think that,
ongoing.
right, whatever it is we as beings are becoming or turn into, whatever this growth process that life is, um, the entire thing is an initiation of sorts, and that's why you get the information through your whole life. You know,
Yeah, and I think that I this is one of my favorite ideas, topics, is this idea of initiation, and the fact that we don't really, like, obviously, like, you've gone through certain initiatory things, like you did some OTO stuff, and like there are structures that we have of initiation, like, and like some people are lucky enough to have their parents initiate them into traditions and all that kind of cool stuff, family members, uncles, aunts, whatever. But by and large, I think the most people, as in the West, don't experience an initiation, and so when that happens, life gonna initiate you, and that can be chaotic. And even in a regular initiation, like, you talk about the Eleusinian mysteries. Sometimes people died,
right,
and like sometimes in an initiation you don't make it, because the point is to look at death and then come back. And now I have this understanding.
right,
Oh, and then I'm not afraid of it anymore. And I think that was the whole purpose of the mysteries, of the Eleusinian mysteries. And I think that's what happened. That's what happened to me when I had a near death experience overdosing. Like, but that was
right,
totally accidental, right? Like that, but like accidental, like nothing is, right. But in my limited view,
right. I
wasn't.
mean, you didn't think you intended to do it,
Right.
right? um,
Yeah, that's a good
yeah.
way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. I didn't think I did. I actually probably signed up for that shit.
You know, everything has meaning. I think that everything has meaning, and decision that we make, every I don't know, man. It's hard to see it because we have examples. I think we tend to live in bubbles with the people around us, and we surround ourselves with people who think like us. Um, I see this a lot because of you know, I work around a lot of scientists, so they're all very smart, and you know, and then I get out there in the real world, and I'm like, wow, these are people from like when I was a kid. I didn't know people were like this anymore. you know,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I mean, it's straight up difficult sometimes for me to even function in a normal conversation about like insurance, man. Like I'm just like, oh,
right. I don't care.
like,
Yeah,
dude, like my eyes just glaze over. I'm just like, man, I'm doing my best, but like sometimes, like, and this is an interesting thing too, right? Like, how do you live? And this is something I've talked about before on here with guests. Like, how do you live and go through the day to day life having glimpsed the other side, the otherness, having touched it, having like, and I think, the experience you're describing, like of having a electricity pass through your heart and then having to come to terms with your own death is like literally what that is. Like that's you touch the other side and come to terms is a good way of putting it, right? Because there's a Jungian aspect to that too, right? Like you have to integrate that experience.
you right.
And it can be really difficult to integrate that and then walk around in daily life like, y'all are still doing this?
Right.
Like you're talking about.
Right. Um, I put it this way sometimes, like, you know, I'm 41. The world was far different when I was a kid. I don't want to go on like an old person rant here. but the circumstances of the world around us, the world we lived in, were different. The way people believed and thought and acted were different. That's so I'm not trying to like incriminate myself, but it doesn't matter. So I am only me in what I call the prime moment, which is just right now. So really, the things that made me up in the past, I'm not saying that, I mean, this is what forgiveness is and all that, but and forgiveness is only a personal thing anyway, because if you've forgiven yourself, it really kind of, that's the thing. You can forgive anything at that point, you know?
Yeah, forgiveness is choosing not to hold that stuff within me. Like I
Exactly.
I can like forgive someone completely and still not be okay with what they did and still it like I don't have to like it. But
Right.
the forgiveness is just choosing not to carry that in me,
Right.
the poison.
Yeah. So I grew up with a bunch of rural, redneck, rough people, kids. I mean, these were my friends and family around me. So, you know, like it was perfectly normal to run around in your yard and just scream the N word at each other. And it's like, but then when I encounter that now, and it's only been what, like 30 years or something since that point, I see people living in that world still. And it's like, how can you even, like, I don't know, man. People, to me, it's just fascinating that we are at the point now where we have all of the collective knowledge of humanity at our grasp. I mean, you can find anything. You can find any belief system. You can find any recipe from anywhere. That's a great example I always use. Like you could make food from literally anywhere in the world, almost any time period that we have records of. Um, to live in the world where you can do that, but then hold views that are so outdated and race based or tribal based, or it's a weird disconnect to me that like you know
Yeah, I understand.
um
It's it's an interesting thing being in and obviously all times are liminal, but I think sometimes are more liminal than others. And so it's really interesting being in a like a time of like where a big whoosh is happening, right? Because there's going to be a lot of development, but then also I think there are going to be instances where it's like I look over here and I'm like, well, that's fucking shit is still happening over there. And I think we can see that now, like in a lot of different ways. It's like the stuff comes so fast and it might not hit everywhere at once. And so in the moment, it can seem like there's a huge disparity or disconnect. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like that was a pretty good example, right? Like I think another one is like I mean just you talk about like evolving in the way that we see each other and the way that we see the world, right?
Right.
Um like what's okay now as opposed to what was okay like when we were kids. And it's kind of amazing that the amount of stuff that like the way like how far we've come. But it's weird because like how can you come so far in that area, but then it's like we're still like building weapons to like disintegrate people. Like
Yeah.
what the
While
fuck is
the
that about?
world is literally burning. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
the world is literally dying around us, and we're
So
killing each
like
other from other countries for some reason.
yeah, and it's like you can make so much progress in one area of like social equality, but then at the same time it's like, well, we're still just gonna like melt people. Like
Right.
that is and that's the kind of thing that makes like it makes it really difficult not to believe in lizard people, right? Like in my opinion. And obviously like there's a little more to it than that. I think it part of it is being in that time of great change. And
Right.
part of it's being in
And
the
the
Kali
lizard
Kali
people, I
Yuga,
actually,
right?
yeah, well, but you can find enlightenment faster in the Kali Yuga.
Yeah,
I
exactly,
mean,
dude.
that's the
Mantra
thing with
works
the Kali
better.
Yuga.
Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, but you have to. I think that the Kali Yuga, I mean, it's just a time of it's the tower crumbling. Like, right,
Yeah,
we've
totally.
climbed the whole tower, and now the tower is crumbling below us, and we have to take a step off the tower.
Yeah.
You
You
know.
had a thought about lizard people. I want to hear what you had to say
Oh,
about that.
I had to explain. I made a joke about lizard people yesterday, and my daughter's 13, and I had to explain to her what I was talking about. So I kind of gave her the brief overrun of the David Icke lizard people. Um, my daughter's very intuitive, so I was able to talk to her, and I was like, it's really just it's not true probably that they're lizard people, but it's a metaphor for a lack of empathy. Like
Yeah.
you have no whatever makes us human, whatever we recognize, we look at each other and see as human. Now, I've never looked into the face of any of the big supposed lizard people, so I will only judge a person once I've met them. Yeah.
Right. That's a good philosophy.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton might be fucking great, dude.
Never met her.
Never met her.
Yep.
Um, don't know her, probably never will. you know,
Right.
really, ultimately, it doesn't affect my life. But that's what the metaphor is. It's the how do you, I, how do you square like, okay, so I know that I have a conscious connection to God or the ineffable mind or the universe or whatever it is that we are all a part of. And I know it because I have experienced it and felt it. Um, it doesn't look like everybody else's. I think that everybody else, there's as many paths to God as there are people who have ever been born. That's what I like to say. There's as many paths back to God as there are people who have ever been born.
I like it.
Um, Also, you can't ever be separated from God. Those people that you might look at and be like, well, they didn't walk a path back to God, but you don't know. You really honestly don't know what path they walked. And
Right.
you're assuming that their path ends when they die. May not, you
Yep.
know. Um, but how do you, as a person, a conscious being, square the circle of the way, people in charge, the way the world is run, um, with creatures that are also conscious? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think that one of the things that makes it makes sense for me is the idea that ideas themselves are beings, and that metaphors are just as valid a way of ascertaining truth. And sometimes, and we talk about time wave this and time wave zero in Kali Yuga, sometimes they are better for ascertaining truth than the evidence of my eyes, right?
Right.
Like, and so and that I think it all, I really think that also, if I'm able to look at it that way and see the archons as like these old ideas, these old structures, these old systems that don't work anymore and are going away, it gives a little bit more of a it's like a medicine. It helps me to have compassion maybe for the people that are the expression of that, because it's like, damn, you had to do that this time around. Like
Right.
you came to the earth to do that.
Right. Um, and that, I've been playing with the idea that thoughts, metaphors, these are just spirits. Like
Yeah,
this is what
totally.
a spirit is. I mean, I know, is magic and spirits, is this internal, external? I tend to be kind of a blend of both, but I really like Jung a lot, and I
Yeah.
do tend to view them. I have always tended to view them as an internal process. They can be helpful. And there are spirits that exist and are empowered almost like a tulpa through time, and that's what a goetic spirit is, right? It's the idea of, if an idea lives long enough and it has enough energy dumped into it, then you can actually summon it up within yourself and maybe even externalize it if that's the tools that work for you. And you can examine it and you can make that idea incorporate into your life, or you can seal it away in a brass vessel, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I like it.
they're all a part of us, I think.
I think it's fully both. I
Right.
think that's what as above, so below is, right? Like the universe is out there and it's also all in you. Like,
Right.
and the
Everything on heaven and earth is
dude,
connected to everything in heaven and earth. That's Lon Milo
yeah.
Duquette.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And that is, so what does that mean for what you and I are? We are like a crossroad or like a portal between the universe outside and the universe within.
Right. So everybody's on Neoplatonism right now. I'm sure everybody's on Neoplatonism
Are
everywhere
they
you look.
now? I was gonna say, oh, I was doing that 2 years ago.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
2 years ago for me.
um,
I'm just kidding.
yeah. I guess it's not new, but I've kind of been playing with this idea, and I'm not, like I said, I'm lazy when it comes to reading. I tend to come up with ideas and then find out that I don't think we invent anything. First of all,
We
I just
remember. That's what we do is we
right.
remember.
We pull them up intuitively. We remember them, you know. But I've been playing with this idea lately that you had Plato, who was an essentialist. He believed that we existed in the world of forms, like we were defined from our essence, our spirit, something above us. And then later, way down, you have like Kierkegaard and some of the other philosophers like Camus, whatever. And they were existentialists, and that's where you get the growth of existentialism. And they said that we were beings that came out of our existence. So the thing that, so in Plato's view, we first were a spirit and then we incarnated and or whatever and became a being through that process. In the existential view, we're like a body and we're born and we grow, and eventually either maybe it's just a span of a lifetime, maybe we grow beyond that. It's irrelevant. I've been playing with the idea of experience, like we're experientialists, of experientialism, where
I like that.
it's not actually the essence, the spirit, which we can't, like, that's our connection to the ineffable mind. That's how we are able to think outside of our biological needs and, you know, the things that just happen around us. And then we have our experience or our existence, our embodied existence within the dimensional reality. But what defines us is the Venn diagram of those two things and that little slice where they intersect. How our essence experiences existence.
I really like this. and I've thought about this too. The idea that an experience is always a relationship between two or more things. And so the idea of like the divine or the ineffable or whatever you want to call it experiencing itself, like if you only have one thing, there can be no relationship and therefore no experience. And this is the Neoplatonist thing too, right? Because you have the emanatory cosmology where it starts with one and then it splits off. And like the idea is not to go back to being the one, it's to be the fullest expression of all of those branches, right? And I like the idea of, I think that the universe is made of experience
Right.
because of that very reason. It is a relationship between two things. Like an experience is a relationship between me and a feeling, or a relationship between me and some external force, or it's a relationship between me and an internal force. Whatever it is, that's an experience. And from that comes a story,
Right.
A to B narrative.
You're right. And yeah, man, that's a big thing I like to go on about sometimes too. This is why I'm podcasting, because it's just the people in my personal life that get to hear this stuff normally. So I just have to, most of them don't listen to me. But the idea that all we are, at the end of it, all you truly are is the narrative of your experience. And so you have your internal version of that experience, but then you also have the way that that experience overlaps with mine, right? So now you're part of my experience. So my narrative experience, the thing that I am, it has overlapped with the thing that you are.
It's the web.
It's the web.
Indra's
But
net.
we're all, yeah, I mean, it's the idea of the divine or the whatever
The web of
experiencing
weird.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that because it's like what I think we talked about this before we hit record, but like so and I talked about this on the most recent episode that came out. It'll be a couple episodes back by the time this comes out, but with Amanda Miriamne Radcliffe about, you know, as an expression of the divine, like, yes, there's a level on which we are all one. And on that level, that is 100% true. There is no separation between me and you at all. Now, however, on this plane, there is at least an experience of separation. But that allows us to dance, and it
Right.
allows us to interact, and it allows us to share and swap ideas.
Actually, I
And
think I listened to that today. I listened to
did
that
you?
today. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. You,
And
because you're
so,
saying this, and I'm like, hey, this sounds familiar. The dancing. Yeah, yeah.
hell yeah, we get to dance. And like,
Yeah.
so that's, to me, that's a beautiful, and, you can call it playing, dancing, whatever it is. But I think that it should be that lighthearted.
Right. Exactly. The cool thing is, and this is kind of my um, I guess I want to plug myself on a podcast I haven't
Plug
released yet,
yourself. Oh,
but
yeah,
the
that's right. You're
podcast
going
when
to
it
come
comes
out with
out
it soon, though.
soon, yeah. The ephemeral soon. I actually paid for a domain name today, so it's a step. um so I called it Dispatches from Post Reality, and I came to the idea of post reality before I discovered the time wave zero stuff, but it overlaps. We're in a period where the rules of reality, as we, this kind of goes back to even what we were saying about what the world was like when you were a kid, how different that is. The rules of all of it have changed. We went from a low information density world to a very high information density world. I think that somewhat is why we are globally politically where we're at. I mean, you're seeing this play out in the sense that people are, I think, a lot of people are unable to adapt to the new high information density world. So they're more susceptible to having their opinions move this way and that way. This is why we have to control the spirits, or not control the spirits, but this is why we deal with the spirits. And I don't think I should say control the spirits, but
I just like to bribe them.
bribe them,
Yeah.
work with them,
Work with them is good. Work with them is good.
Seal them in brass vessels if you need to.
Yeah, tell them I know where they live and I know what their true name is. So give
Right.
me money, you know?
Right. So I think all that is a process where I've come, man, my thing switched again, to the idea that we are, how do I put this? I got to regather my thought.
You're good.
Um, so we only deal with reality. We think this actually, this was a thing I was listening to on Kierkegaard, the philosopher. I don't remember what year he's from, or I think it's pretty old, like 1500s or something. Probably way wrong.
I don't know. So
But he has this idea.
you could tell me anything and I'd just nod
Yeah,
my head.
I'm just saying that, maybe your listener should verify it. But I do know that
Yeah.
he talks about you can be bound in the past and you can be bound in the future. So being bound in the future is like unable to decide on something because you're looking at the future too hard, But you can be bound in the past where you don't take any action because or maybe you take the wrong action because you're acting on old rules, but you don't exist there. The thing you see as your past is not you, and the thing you think you see as your future is also not you. You only exist here. Like, in the moment where you can say, I think I said this in the first email I sent to you, we have the capacity through, you call it through divine connection or our connection to the ineffable mind, whatever, that literally you can say anything you want. I came to this playing Baldur's Gate, actually. I didn't get very far. It's fine. I'm just not really a video gamer anymore. But I would get frustrated because I was like, I want to say more than these these 4 options. Real life, man, I can say anything. In real life, I can literally say anything I want. I can reach out to somebody who I heard through the internet and be like, hey, I like the things you say, let's talk sometime.
Dude, and when you do that, it's an amazing experience, man.
Yeah.
Because I've done it and I was afraid of it.
Right.
But when I look back and I'm like, holy crap, you can just do that. And like, you know what? Usually they'll be like, yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
Usually. I mean, sometimes you don't get an answer or they'll say no, but that's rare.
Right.
I really like that thing about Kierkegaard. You said, I have exposure to that information through the 12 steps. And one of the ideas that process deals with, or a couple of the ideas, or the shadows that we work with in that system, are the ideas of resentment, which is just anger, and fear. And if you look at those 2 ideas, anger always exists in the past.
In the past. Yeah.
It always exists about something that's happened, whether perceived or real, but it's always something that has happened. Like, and obviously, like, sure, it can happen right now, but when I get angry right now, if I really look at that enough, I'm getting angry about it now because I have some idea that's rooted in the past that it's touching on, and it's causing me to have the reaction of anger. Now, fear is always about something that's in the future. I don't really fear things. Now, there are traumas that happen that cause me to have fears that were in the past, but all my fears are rooted in the future.
In the unknown.
About
right.
things the unknown, things that are going to happen, things that may happen, things that could happen. And the crazy thing is that when I act out of fear, it causes me to take actions that lead me to have anger. And it's that Yoda shit, man. But it does work like that. And so I like basically construct a phantasmagorical realm based around fears I have that are often not even rooted in reality. And I'm living out of this this fabricated, it's an illusory place to live in. And so what you're talking about, being in the present, that's the only place that I can actually take that
Action. That's the only place you
that's the
can
only
actually
place I can
act.
take action. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
only place you can
Thank you
act.
for finishing my thought. It is. And
Sorry.
it
Yeah.
no, it's perfect. It's perfect because I was struggling. It totally. It's the only place I can take action. And like you were saying, it's the place of pure potential.
Pure
It is,
potential.
and it's the place of neutrality.
Right.
It's the
And
place of
from
chaos.
right. So from that moment, from the prime moment, the only thing you are is the moment you exist in, you can manifest. I mean, obviously, it's not a dream. You can't just manifest an apple in your hand, but you can manifest a situation in which you have an apple in your hand.
I take actions that lead to being a person that has an apple.
Right.
I be the thing.
Right.
And that's what magic is to me too. People, because I think a lot of the time, like people might think that doesn't square with what I just said, but it actually squares with it really nicely because it's like, oh, aren't you trying to control the future with magic? Like, no, dude, I'm trying to get the power to take the actions I need to take right now to get to and to be the thing that allows me to have the experience that I want to have.
Right. And you can still, I think you can still have we all have a general idea of what we would like our future to look like.
Yeah,
It, you can look at the future and not be bound in it.
dude, I can have ideals. Like
Right.
you talk about ideals. That to me, that's a useful future framework, right? Like, what are the ideals that I want to have? What are my desires that I want to realize?
Right.
Those to me, those are the future, right? But like, those are kind of like they are breathable in that they allow for the universe to kind of express itself the way it needs to express itself rather than me dictating exactly the terms of how it has to happen. Because I feel like
Right.
whenever I do that, like it doesn't work as well. Like magic, like okay, here, take a magical example. Like magic to get a lover that makes me feel desired, that turns me on, that makes me happy, that is a partner for me to live this life with. Magic to do that is going to be a lot more effective than magic to have specific person A fall in love with me and love me forever. Because the universe has to jump through way more hoops for that.
Right. Yeah. You leave space. And this is where the spirits become externalized too, I think, because there is I mean, a lot of capacity for the universe to work with you towards those goals if you state if you, I mean, affirmations or, um, I told you I haven't done ritual work in a while, but I'm trying to kind of start doing that a little bit. This was one of those things that it never clicked for me. Kind of getting back to the way things kind of fell in place a couple of years ago with like my gateway stuff, um, where now I can understand how, for instance, the perfect nature ritual that's coming up in a couple of days that I'm gonna do. That'll be my first ritual work in years, man. Like I'm excited, but now I understand that I'm communicating with myself,
Yeah.
the intelligence that I am, but also the intelligence that extends beyond me. Um, and sending resonance out into the universe and whatever to create my fullest self. I mean, to come to know myself more. I mean, that's really the goal, right? I mean, I don't have like, oh, I think kind of like what you were saying, like, I think magic also, take your example of finding a lover. I could, I could do a working to come to know myself more and to have a better relationship with the universe. Or I can do work to make more money. Well, I think that as I come to know myself more and my ability to co-create with the universe, material comfortability will fall in where it needs to. I don't worry about that. Somewhere in the Bible it says something about the sparrow doesn't worry.
Yeah, they don't reap or sow. Well,
Yeah.
and I I like that too, because for me, there's a quality of it. Like, you talk about attraction. On the last episode with Matt Boisvert, he said that he likes resonance better, and I actually think I like resonance better too. Like, there's a resonance where, like, if I if I resonate with the energy that you're talking about, like if I'm more in touch with the oversoul that is me, like the higher self, if I'm pulling in my most noble attributes, and in touch with that there's a naturally attractive quality to that, and that's going to bring in all kinds of things. Like, money is one of them. But people, you know, I
People.
I think it's really interesting how, when I do this stuff, and I've been doing this stuff for, going on 5 years, maybe more, and that's not long for me. I think I'm still new at it. But when I do this, it's interesting that people that get drawn into my life, it's like I know that they have an energetic link with me, and I'll
Right.
never know who it's going to be, but they'll come, and I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
welcome.
I-
I've been waiting for you. You know what I mean? Like,
right. It's really fascinating. It's always fascinating to me to think about how you end up with the people you end up with. I mean,
yeah,
the paths you cross. Like, what about this person that said something really profound to you one time and then you just never saw them again? Why did that show up in your path? Um, I don't know.
yeah. I think that all the time that we act as avatars for the gods, really. Um, and I'm not saying that stuff wouldn't necessarily happen if I wasn't practicing. Like, I think that stuff's happening all the time, but I want to be in the stream where that's happening as much as it can possibly happen.
Right.
And I do think there's an optimization that is possible there.
Right. Well, I think when we
Maybe
expand
I
our
could just see it.
consciousness, right? When we expand our consciousness and we start looking at the universe and we start co-creating and playing with it, then it looks back and it co-creates and plays with us. I think that's I think that's the whole thing,
Yeah.
the dance, it's to use
Dude,
your
it's like
words.
getting that universal wink. Like, hey, I see you, baby.
Right. Yeah. 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 Actually, I mean, it's like, the idea of synchronicity, and what synchronicity truly means. And I think I used to run on the idea of like, well, it's just, meaningful coincidence and all, but I like more and more I look at it almost like you're divining reality as you go through it.
Dude, 100%. You
Right.
are you
So a
like
synchronicity is
reality
like
is the
pulling a trump
cards.
card. That's
Yes.
what I told my wife last night. Like we were talking about it. Like you can look at the world. I think I've been trying to play with this idea for a little bit of looking at the world around me through the lesser arcana in the tarot deck. Like, this is fire and water, and this is, and when you have a synchronicity, it's like you pulled a trump card.
Mm.
And it's like, you know, and it's always the weird thing. Like yesterday, oh, never mind. Never mind. I don't want to talk about that. Never mind.
You don't
My
have you
bad.
don't have to talk about that. That's
Yeah, yeah,
fine.
yeah.
But I do like the idea of the, like, a strong sync being a trump card. Like, hey, look here. This is important. And I think
Right.
sometimes it's not even like, it can be easy to. I used to, like. There's a fine. I don't know. I guess there's a fine line for me, because I do have an obsessive mind that, like, I used to delve way too deeply into, like, what does this specific synchronicity mean, as opposed to seeing, nowadays I see it more as a, like, it is the wink that's saying, like, just pay attention, you're on the right path, or like, we see you, remember who you are, remember who
Right.
you are.
Remember who
You're,
you are. You when I first when I first started doing the gateway stuff, I don't mean to go on about the gateway stuff. I'm
no,
not a
please, I
CIA
would love
plant.
to hear. I would I would love to hear your experience with the gateway stuff, though. I want to hear about it.
The gateway stuff, man, is it's super cool. And um, from a science point of view, I want to find the research papers and wherever the information that Bob Monroe originally collected in his original studies, because they have to be there somewhere. And I want to try to build my own hemisync stuff and play with it on my own workbench, because I do a lot of electronic stuff. And I mean, everything you can't see here is just soldering irons and oscilloscopes and stuff. So
Oh, fun.
yeah, yeah. But it was a meditative, it's just meditation. I mean, it's just a meditation practice, but it allows you to it guides you by tricking your brain into deep meditative states, samadhi, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
I it was actually through that I realized that, I mean, that I think anybody who achieves knowledge in conversation realizes that they've had it their whole life and they just didn't realize that's what it was.
Yeah. Or it gets drowned out.
Right. Or we drown it out. We
Yeah.
don't we're taught to doubt ourselves or to doubt any information that comes from within. you know how can you know? Well, I can know because I'm literally a living part of the universe.
Yeah. How do you know that? Cryptic symbolism in my dreams. Like that
Right.
meme? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. um I don't know. It's a tool set that I used for a short period of time, and I still play with it every now and then, but I kind of quickly moved beyond it to the point like, well, I can just I don't know, man. There was a point where I was doing one of the hemisync meditate the gateway meditations, and I came to the understanding that I had everything I needed. And it's true.
That's great.
Everything you need, you have. And it's right there in the prime moment. Anytime you need it, you can pull it out at literally any moment.
And that's true about everything.
Everything.
Like, if what we're saying is true and the whole universe exists within you, guess what?
Yeah.
You've got it all
You've
there.
got it all.
And it
Um,
helps, like the rituals, to me, that kind of stuff, it's helpful because it kind of externalizes it in a way that, like I do like that sympathetic quality of it, right? Like it's kind of taking it into the realm, or like past the realm of my understanding, and projecting it into the world. I like that aspect, but it's actually like, I think the more you do it, the more you realize, like, I don't really have to do all that stuff, like, to do a
right.
lot, to get to communicate with these beings, or to get to these states, right?
Right. But it's just to put you into an astral state. Like
Yeah,
and imagine it's just imagination. It's just the thing when you're a kid. It's just your imagination.
dude, it's so much is just being a kid.
Right.
It's like getting
Um,
back to the place where I was when I was a kid, when I could fucking do that, when I could jump into pretend.
right. Yeah. And maybe that's what Jesus meant when he said,
100%.
right, that the kids actually, I mean, also they're the future. He probably meant that too.
Yeah, the descendants.
Right. Um, yeah. Uh, I actually had actually talking about that. I had a really cool. This was before all this. So I had my whole OTO thing, and it was kind of like when I was a kid going to church, where I tried really hard to make it work for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like everybody describes this experience in their process, and I want it to be like that for me. I want to have the cool apparition in front of me. I want to have the cool dream experience. um and I have, but not, I guess like it's all there anyway, right? It's just the ability to look at it, to go into that space where you can look at it, and that's what we're doing when we do ritual work. Is
No, I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think that's a really common experience, and I know it's been an experience for me where it's like I I basically start to like what you just explained is kind of like I start to try to filter my experience through what other people have experienced and the way they do it. And I don't know, like all I can say is my experience isn't like a lot of people's experience and like that's as it should be, right?
right. What would be the value?
Yeah, like of all of it being the same. And that's the dance, right? Like we have different moves and different ways of doing the same moves and different flourishes and styles. And okay, so what you're talking about with like having seeing the you want to see the apparition and have that experience. That stuff is all cool, but like to me, the most amazing result that I've gotten for stuff like this is like what you're talking about when you describe knowledge and conversation is like being able to actually get my mind reprogrammed to where and tuned and cleansed to where those intrusive thoughts, those intrusive negative thoughts, those negative narratives, those self-defeating ideas, those old ideas, those limiting ideas, to where those are brought down to a real low hum or gone. I don't think they can really be gone, but like maybe, you know, I have a lot less of it than I used to, and then have that voice of inspiration, that voice of encouragement, that voice of power, really
Right,
is how I would describe it. To have that feed in
right,
knowledge and conversation right there, like that, and that's
right.
the kind of stuff that allows action.
And these are all just metaphors, though. They're all just metaphors for the same thing. This is perfect. This is your perfect nature.
Perfect
Knowledge and
nature.
conversation, perfect nature.
Yeah.
It's I don't. It's the lady, right? It
Yes.
That's one way that this information presents itself to you. It can be through more established religious views. I do think that Christianity initially was a initiatory path, um, and it does have the potential to be kind of, but you have to be not looking. You have to be looking for it. I think at this point, um, you have to really only care about what Jesus said and nothing else. That's kind of what actually I was talking to my dad about that because he's still pretty Christian and all, and I was like, I mean, I agree with everything Jesus said. Um, Pretty cool dude, you know, honestly. Um,
Especially in those Gnostic gospels.
right. Oh
I
yeah,
like
man.
that stuff.
That was
Gospel.
actually the thing that so I ran away from Christianity for a long time, and I don't consider myself a Christian by any means. I would maybe say Christist. It's a thing I came up with because it implies that you're trying to become that Christ energy rather than follow somebody else's example. Um, but the Gnostic stuff was what kind of started turning me back around to that, like the Book of Thomas. Like, do not lie, do
Yeah.
not do what you hate. That is extremely powerful
It's so good.
because if you only exist in the prime moment, if this right here is all that I am, there's no value in lying or doing what I hate.
Dude, it's actually it's a betrayal of the spirit within me. Like my my intent
Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit of God.
yes, which is you. And like
Right.
my intention is to be in alignment. And so lying, it's not that it's like that's morally wrong and evil. It's that I'm just not in alignment with it.
Right.
And it
And
is an
yeah,
example of a non-alignment because it's not like I know it's wrong and I say it anyway. That's unalignment.
right.
And and it's also like kind of bad magic. But um That's interesting. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I also like the part in the Gospel of Thomas where he says, if you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. If you do
Right.
not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That's good
Yeah.
stuff.
That's Jungian right there too. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
you, um, so I, people listen to me when I talk in my daily life. I tell you, I say this kind of things to people. I kind of, after my little heart attack scare, I kind of got on this thing of like, well, if I truly believe these things I say, then it's like, it's almost like a duty to share them. Like you, you are just in the prime moment. Everything you do now is what defines your life right now. Like, um, and so I find myself in a lot of times lately being where people, for some reason, which is it's completely silly to me, care about my opinions, or they care about, like, or they want advice on things or whatever. And it's just the idea. I don't know. I just tell people, like, you got to look at yourself. I mean, you're the only thing, man. At the end of life, there's not going to be anybody else there to judge the secret things that you've done or you thought. It's just you. You're just God. It's,
I mean,
no
yeah.
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. But it's true. And damn, they'll crucify you for that shit. Like the kingdom of heaven is within you. Um, that's dangerous stuff. Like people, I don't know if it's like a pathological avoidance of responsibility or what it is. Like I think about it a lot. I really couldn't say like what the answer is, and honestly, at this point, like I'm not spending a lot of time trying to figure it out. I'm just not doing it.
Right. Yeah. Um, I at this point, I just like to talk to the people, the experiences of other people who are in this also, and everybody. I mean, there's nobody who's not worth talking to, with a couple of caveats. I mean,
Well,
if
okay,
they're not worth talking to, you'll know. Like, you'll
well,
find out.
and here's how I kind of couch that. There are certain people who aren't worth talking to if I'm not interested in having the experience that talking to them brings.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that experience, they're not worth talking to. It doesn't say anything about their worth as a person. It's about the work, like it's about the is is the juice worth the squeeze, basically.
Right.
Like are the actions I'm taking leading to the experience I want to have? And if they're not, then they're not worth taking for me.
Yeah. I guess when I say that, I suppose I mean it more in the sense of the people that come across your path.
Yeah.
Dude, not necessarily your neighbor with the DeSantis flag in his yard. you know,
Yeah, totally.
I don't think we're gonna have a lot to talk about. I mean, he's also part of the universe, so
Yeah.
I do talk to him, and you know, you do get information from people. It's just that that's not the experience to seek out. But just like the people who come across your path, like just the random person, like you're not gonna see them again. Yeah, man, have a whole conversation with them. Talk about religion and politics because that's the only two things that affect your life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I like it, man. I really think that everyone that I that comes into my life, they have something to teach me if I'm willing to see it.
right?
Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's just me that misses out.
right. And you don't have to have every experience.
Yeah,
It's
I
fine.
mean, it's some days I'm just not in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's okay.
yeah. I mean, still having to get through the Kali Yuga out here. I mean, it's
Dude, it's rough out here in the Kali Yuga, dude.
yeah, it is. You know, that's actually an idea that I remember reading about the Kali Yuga as a child and being like, wow, that's fascinating. And then just to see how the world has changed and evolved. Like, I don't want to have like a doomer thing. I don't think it's actually a doomer thing to say we're in the apocalypse. I don't
No.
think it's a doomer thing to say we're in the Kali Yuga. I mean, this is just it's the circumstance I find myself in, but I am not my circumstance. You know, I experience it, but I get to choose how I act in it and what I take out of it, you know?
And I'm here. And I
Yeah.
I choose to be that intentional to where I actually okay, so I like died and came back to life. So that means I am here intentionally because I could have just stayed dead.
Right.
And that has happened in a metaphorical way in other times of my life too, right? Like there's such thing as like a spiritual death too, but we don't have to get into
Right.
that. We can talk about just the straight up like physical stuff. And so I am here intentionally. Like I mean to be here. And so that takes away all like I can't bitch about it because I mean to be here. Like I chose this. I
Right.
chose to come back and therefore like it gives me total agency, sovereignty, but it also if I remember that there's just I can't lament it. It's like we're here to do the business we're here to do. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's,
Kali Yuga's great surfing.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many more boring times you could have been alive during. Yeah. I mean, look at this. Look at the technology we have. You're at least 300 miles away from you. I can't, you're like North Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how far it is. Maybe 300 miles or so.
You know,
We're able to have this conversation through our phones and
where are you in
computers. And
Florida?
I'm in Tallahassee, man.
Okay, so I want to say it's like more like 5, but I don't know.
It may be. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Georgia's big.
6
So's
mile. It's a
Florida.
6 hour drive.
We're
Six.
in some big states.
It's like 360. If
Oh,
you
you know
just
what?
assume you go 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, dude. And it's funny. I drove a truck so long. I'm so bad at miles.
Oh yeah.
Oh, dude. I never learned any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess so long. A year isn't that long, but it felt like a long time to me.
Did you enjoy that? I mean, I often think that would be kind of an interesting experience to have.
Dude, yeah, there was a lot of it that I enjoyed. Yeah, but for a person like me, I don't think it was really conducive to my um mental state. Like I one of the things that I've learned since um since becoming sober is that like I'm actually like really interested in community and I'm really interested in like being like you talk about connections, like life is connections. I'm interested in making those connections and like long-term ones and like sticking around and being here and stuff. And I've gone through a lot to learn that and even like in even without like making it super difficult with drugs and alcohol, I've still had a hard time learning that just sober. And so yeah, so I every time it's something like that, it's like, oh, yeah, wait, I forgot. I do really want to be around. You know what
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like I want to go off on this adventure, but then I'm on the adventure and I'm like, oh wait, I'm just doing it again. Like
Right. Yeah.
which is like that's not to say there's anything wrong with that, but like it's just not the experience I'm interested in having anymore. Again,
Yeah.
time to
Are you
experience.
good at the backing and all that? Because some truck drivers aren't
Dude, I'm
great at
good at it.
backing up.
I'm good at it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm good at it anymore. It's been a second, but like yeah, I got pretty good at it, which is
Yeah.
it's kind of fun.
Yeah. I couldn't do the night driving. I'm a horrible night driver. I fall
Dude,
asleep.
I don't get tired.
Yeah.
Like at night. Yeah, like I don't know. I never had a problem like like dozing off or anything. I'm I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a Nightbird
Well,
trait.
this is actually interesting. So I told you I work in science, and there's a researcher in the university that I work in that studies circadian rhythm, and he explained to me one time that your circadian rhythm is actually programmed into your cells, like every cell. So your body, all the cells in your body have a natural cycle at which they want to turn off and go to sleep, and they kind of all do that. And I mean, you can obviously exist outside of that. It's not great for your health, but people do it. But that's, I mean, everybody's circadian rhythm and stuff like that is different, and it's actually encoded in your cells. I guess your DNA probably, or whatever. I'm not a scientist.
Right. But yeah, I that's interesting. I can believe that. I can dig that. Um, what's the longest you've ever stayed awake?
I've done. I mean, I haven't stayed awake super long in a very long time. I like to go to bed at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but I'm talking. What's the longest you've ever stayed awake
Longest
in
I've
your
ever
life?
stayed awake, I don't know, like 2 days probably.
Okay. Yeah, I've been awake 8 days before.
8 days. Did you do that as like a working kind of?
No, I did that as a meth addict,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
dude. And I'll tell you what. You want a strong hallucinogen?
I bet. Yeah.
Stay awake for 8 days.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I mean, real hallucinations. You know,
Right.
like, and they call it, temporary psychosis, but it's just sleep, and it's just like lack of sleep induced.
But you're messing with your filter, right? Like
Yeah.
you have all this information out there in your brain. It's like your filter between dimensional reality you and infinite you. And it kind of shuts down a little bit when you dream at night, but then like you can like
You
make
know
it
what I
stop
think
doing
it's
that.
like? I think
What's
it's
that?
like becoming a ring wraith.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
where like the ring wraiths, like the longer they had the like they used the ring, like the more they're they passed into the realm of shadow, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. Like
Yeah. They get thinner and thinner. And yeah.
yeah.
I actually, as a side, as an aside, I just listened to the Cimmerillion by Andy Serkis audiobook.
Oh, it's so good,
It's how
man.
I it's how all of his readings are how it was intended to be consumed, I believe. It just had to wait for him to read them to me. Like,
I listened to that, and I listened to the trilogy with him too.
yeah.
Dude, I listened to that Silmarillion read by him on the road, and I read the Silmarillion like once a year, or I did for a long time, like since high school. It's my favorite. Like I read the Silmarillion before I read the Lord of the Rings, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like I've always loved lore like that, and like people are like that's so fucking boring. I'm like, well, I read the Bible 3 times, so I don't know what.
Man,
You know what I
well,
mean?
back in the days before the internet, and my parents weren't really great about the number of books I had. I did read the Bible a lot. I love the Book of Revelation, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah, dude. I love the backstory, and yeah, his reading of it is so good, man. That shit makes me cry.
yeah, absolutely beautiful. Um, that actually Tolkien is one of those things that I like a lot because as fragments of the infinite or the ineffable mind or God or whatever, we can create, but we think we're the ones creating, but we're just receiving inspiration or gnosis. We're all that kind of knowledge is received. So every story we tell has to, I guess it doesn't have to be
If
true.
I can
Like I don't,
tell it, well, no, dude, no, I'm
if
following
you
your
can
thought.
conceive of it, but I don't think Five
I'm
Nights at
fist
Freddy's is
pumping.
real. I hope not. It's scary.
I'm fist pumping at this in the spirit realm. I just did it in reality to close that loop. But I was mentally fist pumping before I actually fist pumped because I I'm down with that. Like I think that if you can tell the story, it's real.
Right.
And I don't necessarily mean that like it's gonna come barging through the window, but I do mean, and maybe it will, but like it what I mean is like in the same way that metaphor is just as viable a means of ascertaining reality, just so imagination is a discrete realm.
Right.
And so
It
it
has
has
just as much
its place.
validity and truth as everything else.
And
if you can say it.
myth is a good example of that, because myth is one of those things. It's like it's truer than true, because
Right.
it contains. It's like it's kind of like how it's like a system of storing data that can. It's just able to store so much information because the symbols can encode like multiple meanings. And so a myth can like work on like 5 levels. It's kind of like how I've heard this is true, and I hope it is because I'm going to say it. But like hieroglyphs can function that way too, where like a stele can have like a bunch of hieroglyphs that are telling a story, but then it's also like um telling how much grain is in like the storehouse or something. I've heard that. I don't know if that's really the case because I don't read hieroglyphs, but that I like that idea, right? Like in a myth, I think is an even better example of that, because they can encode like astrological information. It can be an almanac of seasons. It can be a history of a people. It can be a map of the psyche. It can be like literally something that happened, etc., so on and so forth. And so when we pass that, that's actually the stuff that's able to last longer. You know, we prioritize the physical manifestation of data these days, like, oh, it's on a fucking hard disk. We call it a hard copy. Well, like, that's actually the worst way to do it. The most enduring way is through story and is through myth. So I would argue that it's like maybe it's even better than
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's lasted, right? Like myth, we got myths that, I mean, I guess the earth is only 6,000 years old. That's what some of the people think from the Christian point of view. But we have a myth that
Well,
is, as far as we know,
that's a
6,000 or more years
misunderstanding.
old, that describes the Big Bang and the evolution of the growth of planets, the formation of water, the evolution of plants, and then animals, and then a life form that God could finally touch and imbue with a sense of himself. You know, it's, yeah,
But that's also you talking about like we think we're creating, but we're just kind of remembering, or I don't know exactly how you put it, but I like the concept in Gnosticism of anamnesis, which to anyone listening that doesn't know what that means, it means a loss of amnesia, or like really unforgetting.
unforgetting, right?
And that to me describes the process of learning so perfectly, because it's like I hold it all within me, but then, oh, I just remember. And it just feels right. It just hits. Um, and then also, you know, I think that that's why we're co-creating, right? Because we are sparks. We are the light sparks. Like we're sparks of the divine, of Pleroma. And so it's like, yeah, I'm like that power is flowing through me. It's not just like it's a demiurgic kind of thought to think that like there is no God but me and I'm the one doing this. And it's a more divinely inspired thought to think like I'm dancing this dance with God or the gods or however you like to see it, and we're doing it together. We're co-creating. We're kind of dancing.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I on it. Well, I think that's one of the things on the demiurge, that idea that I think, yeah, it can be a demiurgical thought to say that you are God in a
No,
sense,
you're God.
but you are God. And actually, the demiurge is there to make us forget that we are God, right? I mean, it's the systems of the world is what is real. That's the demiurge, right? That's, no, don't think about yourself and your relationship to all this. Think about the systems. Think about work in the morning. Think about, your taxes or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Well, okay. There's a and I see what you're saying, but I think what I'm trying to say is there's a difference between saying I am God and there is no other before me, and we are all children of God
Right.
that contain
Yes.
the essence of the divine, right? So like there's a very it's like this the person who's who's having a psychotic break and believes they're Jesus is only wrong when they think they're the only Jesus. Like
Right.
if they lose their mind and understand that everyone is Jesus, they've just become enlightened. They're
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's usually that self um aggrandizing, self-prioritizing kind of I am God that's like problematic. And so yeah, it's a fine line. That's why I call it demiurgic, because the demiurge says there is no God before me
Right.
in my book, right? Um,
Right. Yeah.
Jehovah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as models of your mind, the demiurge is that part of you that says that without, but it's your mind saying it, right? I mean, that's what the demiurge is. It's your mind. Yaldabaoth is the the magistrate, right? It's your mind. It's not. It's that filter part of your brain that you can.
It's like your superego.
Right. Yeah. It's that thing that filters between you and your true self.
But that can be, and I'm not even like a big demiurge is evil kind of guy. I'm kind of like the demiurge just can't see everything. Like the demiurge doesn't have all the information kind of thing. So
Right.
like, but it's still the outcome is the same, right? Like, oh, it's all me. It's a myopia, a solipsism that I find isn't conducive to like real relationships. That
No.
it
No.
only leads to hierarchical relationships, right? And from where I'm standing, at least.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think solipsism is a fun thought experiment. I do think it's a thought experiment. It's something that we've all went through, I think. Um, but I don't know, man. I don't feel like I have the capacity to create all the cool people I know, you know?
Dude, there's a thing about I think it's happening a lot more nowadays with like people believing that other people are actually not even real. That's dangerous, dude.
It is dangerous. Yeah. Um, Easy to rob somebody of their rights if you don't think they're real, you know?
Yeah, and like I'm all for like the Matrix and shit, right? But like once I'm starting to think that people aren't real, I'm like that. Um, again, metaphors. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. The Matrix. The Matrix is a weird one to fit in there because it is Gnostic in a sense. Um, I think you have to go down like to where the machines start wanting to work with Neo. And the ultimate thing with Neo is he realizes, and this is even at the beginning, the Oracle tells him, "No, you're not really the one because everybody's the one." Um,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's really what the Gnostic Gospels tell you too, right?
yeah, and even the accepted gospels that's
Even
in
the
there from.
accepted Gospels, Jesus says, like, no, no, you're all sons of God.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, man.
it's just easy to and I don't know, maybe it's becoming. I have a hope that it's becoming less feasible to put it all on one central person. Like I think for a long time that's been the mode. Like we need glorious leader to like open the gates of heaven for all of us. And like maybe that's just a stage of evolution too. Like I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with it, but I think that we're actually moving out of that. And that what we're seeing now in the world is like the birth pangs of the next thing. And that it's just difficult to move between those two because it's a huge shift in the paradigm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're at a stage of evolution as a species. And I speculate what it looks like. I think that it can imply certain things that maybe things aren't super great in the short term. Yeah. And,
That happens.
and this is, we're seeing this in like a lot of the astrology stuff. Like there's going to be some hardships, but like the only way to get there is through it. Like we have to get through here.
Birth pangs, if you want to go back biblical again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Birth pangs. And like, so that's a very, dude, for the baby and the mother, an incredibly, I mean, fuck, I only have one side of that experience, but
Yeah, right.
like, just for everyone involved is very violent and painful, right? Like,
Yeah,
but
it
that's what
sucks for
is
the dad
required.
kind of too during the thing. Like I had a whole
Yeah, I
fight
bet.
with the nurse and everything. So
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
yeah.
Hell yeah. That's, yeah, for sure. Everyone
No,
involved.
I mean I'm not gonna say it was the same for me, but
But still, you're involved in the show, right? Like, yeah, and so I think maybe that, has to happen. Like the tower card is violent and it's an upheaval, but it's necessary for the all the stuff after it to come, right?
right. Well, it's necessary. I actually in my little stint in the OTO, I got tired of people every time the tower card comes up, there's a certain person that'll just be like, "Oh yeah, that's bad. That's ruinous. It's bad." But the tower card directly precedes the star.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of see it more as you climb the tower to reach the star, and then the closer you get to the star, the brighter it gets. You get a little bit closer, and it's the moon. You get a little bit closer, and it's too bright to look at. It's the sun. And then you get a little bit closer than that, and it's the universe. Universe?
The world, yeah,
The
same. I
world.
think in the Thoth deck it's the universe, right?
So
Yeah.
it's kind of a Thoth guy.
Oh no, that's cool. I like it too. It's good.
It's just the first deck I ever got, and it
It's the first deck I
resonates
ever
with
got
me.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
Um
I like the images a lot.
I do like the images. I like the imagery in it. My wife is using one that I like right now that I might start. It's really pretty. I don't know which one it is. I think it's something Mundi. These two women, they did a podcast, Fortune's Wheelhouse. I don't know. And they have a tarot deck that's like some of the best artwork. I was looking at the devil card last night, and I'm like, just the way it makes it clear that the devil in this case is like the systems that bind you,
Yeah.
and it's just a really beautiful deck. I wish I could actually name drop it. Sorry.
You're good.
Look up their
Everyone
podcast,
has to look it up.
Fortune's
Yeah.
Wheelhouse, and
Yeah. They'll
but
have to
it's
do
a
their own
beautiful deck.
investigation. Yeah.
Exactly.
If they're even still listening at all.
Yeah, yeah. That's always the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
Dude, I like that. I like that idea. And I think, that's cool because it's like, okay, by the time I get there, I don't even care that the tower has completely fallen away
right.
because
Because
I'm in the new world.
you've used it.
Yeah.
Right. And it was always going to crumble under you. You made it to the top, and
It's like when
you know,
Mario has to jump off Yoshi to get to the next
bye
platform.
Yoshi. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I choose to see it. At least.
I like that. Yeah. Now we just need a Mario tarot deck. That'd be great.
Dude, that would be great, man. Great. Well, I think that's a great point to stop at. Is there anything else that you want to mention? Do you want to promote? Like, do you want? I know. How do you feel about talking about? You need to just put out an episode, dude.
I'm gonna have to start putting it out, and we're getting close, man.
Nice. So
I
talk about it.
Um, so my idea was to make it kind of a variety show, almost like an old radio show, and have like all this content built into it. It's good. I think it'll be real good when it's done, but it's kind of like, I don't know, time. It takes time to make content. So I'm starting to organize people around me into being content creators. Like, like a good friend of mine that does video work, he's going to write commercials because he films commercials all day. Like that's what he does. So, I'm going to start outsourcing bits. And it's
Are you
kind
gonna
of
do like fun, like fake commercials kind of stuff?
oh yeah, that's what I want to
Dude,
do.
I would love to help out with that. I love that kind of stuff,
dude. Yeah. And
if you
the
don't
other
mind, I mean,
thing,
I don't know. You don't have. If you
no,
want,
I
then fuck
actually
you.
love
But
the idea. I want it to be, so the idea is, it's about, we're in post reality. We've made it to this point where we have all information. Everything is available. I can, and it's breaking us in some ways because it's tearing down old rule sets that people really needed and really relied on. So we're having to deal with that. But it's also, I think you said something about, we're we're like, part of working with magic is to become an avatar of the divine or the gods or the spirits or whatever you're dealing with at the time, you know. Well, I think we're at the point, and this is kind of how I view almost the stage of evolution or whatever it is that we're at, where we should also all be avatars of ourselves. Like,
yeah,
you've made yourself an avatar of yourself. You are, um, you know, and I think you see that in many people. I mean, you truly do. I
I,
mean,
that's what perfect nature is. That's what
right,
knowledge and conversation is. Being an avatar of yourself. I like to sometimes call it being possessed by yourself.
right,
Like if I'm always going to be possessed by something, why don't I become possessed by the best version of me?
right. Yeah. I mean, that's it. And that's the work. I think that the whole purpose of all of the work is to bring that version of yourself, your whatever lens you have to view it through, your holy guardian angel or your, your perfect nature, or whatever lens you have to view it through, to bring that out into yourself, and then to help encourage other people to bring that out into themselves. And I think that's where we're at in time. And I think that I like to think that, okay, I think that there is a form of apocalypse coming. I view myself as an apocalyptimist.
I love it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
um, where I think that apocalypse just means unveiling. It just means, it's the idea of seeing the truth. I mean, we're at the point where there's not much else left to look at. I think if you look at the strain people are under everywhere, just in their daily lives, I mean, it's hard out there, man. It's hard. I mean, work, the things that the world, the systems are expecting of you, they're not compatible with the worldviews that many of us have developed or come into since everything started falling apart. I mean, bro, like, millions of people just died a couple years ago. Seriously, that's kind of a big deal, but we're expected to just go on like it didn't happen, you know?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of us, and me included, got the veil lifted from our eyes in that time, and it's like, oh shit, so I can see what's really important now.
Right,
I can
right,
go back.
right. And I think that maybe that was a catalyst along this evolutionary train of, like, all right, everybody start opening your eyes and waking up. um Whatever it is, man, it's super fascinating. It's super cool to be here and present in this moment. you know that that's the takeaway, and that's kind of what my podcast, the only thing I want to do is, so I had the idea with my podcast of trying to capture the things I love about people around me, even. But I mean, just people connected to you. Like, yeah, bro, if you had cool commercial ideas, I would love for you to make a commercial. You know,
Yeah,
you
I
can
love
even
that
put it
kind
on
of
your
stuff.
podcast too. That would be fine.
That's like I had a writing partner, and then it's like most of what we thought of was just like awesome fake commercials, just like ridiculous Tim and Eric style shit. Like,
Yeah, yeah, brother Cinco kind of stuff.
yeah, man, yeah. I Yeah, that's good times. Yeah, dude, that sounds awesome. And dude, you said you know what you want to call it? Do you
Yeah,
want to
I'm
say
gonna
that?
call it dispatches from post reality. Dispatches from
Nice.
post reality.
So we
Um,
will watch that space.
yeah. Um, I think this will light a fire under me to kind of get it out there a little bit,
Good.
start working on it.
Because, dude, that's it. That's the thing. It's like I wanted to do this for so long, and I just knew that eventually it would just take that one step.
Right.
And I'm still taking steps. You know what I mean? But like, I just had to do it.
Yeah.
I just had to try it.
And there's a certain aspect at which I'm like, maybe I should just start putting out what I have. And so I think that's when I got a couple things. Like I want to come up with like a little intro and outro, little Steam music and stuff. And just put out what I have, man, and let the content that grows in it grow on its own.
It'll grow. It'll grow.
If it's intended to. I mean, it's just a great time,
Yeah, it is. It's wild stuff.
Um,
I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be able to share it, man. It's so cool.
yeah, for sure. And it's just part of that thing of like you can literally, okay, so I think we all also do this. Like, I don't know, man. I failed out of college. I had part of my path was coming to terms with that and then making something out of my life that I making a life that I liked, and yeah, I did a pretty decent job of it. But it's easy to be like, man, like I listen to all these podcasts, all these people are so smart. Like, how do I become like I'm not smart like this guy? But it's not, it's really about nobody has my perspective and my view of the reality that I have.
I'll tell you this too. This is something that I've learned that's been a very important piece of the puzzle for me. That wall that exists between you and the person on that podcast actually is not real.
Yeah.
The wall does not exist. They're
I
just
like
a
that.
person
Yeah.
out there doing it.
Yeah.
And the more I like got people that I've been listening to for a long time to actually come on here and talk to me, the more that was reinforced. It's like, oh
Yeah. I
wait,
bet that's a cool
there is
thing.
no the barrier is imaginary, and that's an apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
So like we can live our own apocalypse, and dude, I think that's a form of apocalypse remediation. Because if apocalypse is gonna apocalypse anyway, well, why don't I tear that fucking veil?
Yeah.
You know, before they can, before whatever before the trumpet can blow. Well, I already done ripped it. I already done ripped it, baby. I'm here. I'm waiting for y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. Before the trumpet blows.
Dude, they tried to pour out that cup, and I had already drank the motherfucker.
I already drank it.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, brother.
And,
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, come back,
It's a great
man.
time.
Come back.
Yeah,
We'll
for
do it
sure.
again.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe I'll get an episode out soon and start releasing stuff, and I'll come back on.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Cool. I guess I have an email address that we have, and it's real bad. Mike, now that I'm having to say it out loud, I think I'm gonna have to make a new email address. But it's subversive@proton.me, and that's not how it's spelled at all. It's SVBVRSV, kind of doing like the Roman UV thing.
I can post it. If you want. Do you want people to reach out to you there?
Yeah. If anybody's interested, and I don't know why you would reach out to me right now. I don't even have a podcast, but
Who knows, man? You never know.
Yeah, there's weirdos everywhere.
Dude, I never know someone's gonna connect to. I really don't. And that's the cool thing, is because it's not my business. Like I just do the best I can and put it out there and then see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll post that up on the description.
Cool.
So they can
Awesome.
hit you up if they need to.
Awesome.
Thank
dude.
you so much for coming on, man. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you soon. Do you experience weird shit? Do your parents not like to tell their friends about what you do in the woods? Do you make more friends in a graveyard than you do at a party populated by living humans? Do you have interactions with beings that are not strictly considered human? Do other people look at you like you're crazy when you mention talking to trees in casual conversation? If you fist pumped or even just answered yes to any of these questions, you may be a nightbird. So let's sing together. If you'd like to come on the show and flap your gums with me, share your stories, or just talk about the malleable nature of reality for a while, then send me an email at tim@nightbirdpodcast.com. That's tim@nightbirdpodcast.com. I'd love to have you on the show. But until then, I gotta fly. But before I go, let me say this. Remember, you are never alone. I believe you.